There we go. Class 13. Just keep on plowing away. I forgot to change that slide. Chapter 21, CSS. So that's the main focus for the assignments, at least. Here's really all you need to know about CSS. There are 3 different places that you can define your styles. You can have it in an external file. That's what we are going to be mainly focusing on. You can put it internally, usually in the header of your file, of your HTML file. And then if you do want to just change one line and that's it, you can put it in line. So any of those 3 are acceptable. Common practices, you want them all external. So whenever you get bigger ones, if you can imagine a company having, 100 different HTML files, if some of the CSS is inside each individual file, some is like on individual lines, if some are external, it gets really confusing on where these CSS, these styles actually live and which one's contributing to what. So common practice is we do have them external. We don't always have one external file, though. You usually have one external file for the whole entire site. So if you have a brand or marketing that you're always going to use this shade of blue and this shade of purple and this shade of yellow or whatever, you usually put that in your main style sheet. But then depending on, each page individually, you could have several external style sheets to kind of link in there. And then, well, how do you get them inside the HTML to know what HTML to mess with? There's 3 ways to identify what exactly you want to style. So there's elemental selectors. I think they do call them selectors, which are your tags like P for paragraph or H1 or, those tags that you're usually setting up. So your selector could be an element, which is like a tag. It can be a class, and you can define the class in that, or it can be an ID. So we're going to talk about all 3 of those. But that's really all there is to CSS. Everything else is Googling. There's thousands of different built-in CSS things that if you want to modify or change, it's, oh, I want this to be a bigger font. Well, you just Google, how do I make my CSS do a bigger font, and then it'll tell you what you need. So CSS is not one of those where it's a logical thinking step as much as can you Google the right thing to get the right property that you want and then assign it the right value to make it do what you want. The hardest part about CSS is whenever there are so many files that could contain CSS, your styling, sometimes they override each other. And then you're asking yourself, well, how did they override themselves? And where are these things at? And I'm going to hopefully try to show you some development tools in the browser that'll show you, at least whenever you're debugging those things, where to look. Good question already. Which of these, element, class, and ID, is probably more used? It really depends. If you want all of your paragraphs, then you're going to use the element one. Your classes are a little bit more confined, and then your IDs are almost always like a 1 or 2, like they're very specific. So it just depends on how narrow your scope you want. If you want it to be the whole entire web page or a site, not just a page, but a site, you're going to probably do the element and or class. If you're wanting it more specifically, you're going to do class. And if you're going to target something, then you use ID. That's usually how the breakdown is there. The other thing we're going to talk about is Git. I'm not like an expert per se, but I feel very comfortable in Git because I have to use it all the time in my job. So I actually like the Git questions that you guys have whenever you're doing your assignments. I don't know, some of you have even noticed I almost get a little excited to help you guys whenever it's with Git because I know it's something that you guys aren't familiar with, and it's something that I feel like I can help out the most. So I will show you some things in Git that I do, and then as we get further in, I didn't type it up, but I didn't have enough time other reasons, personal things happened this week, so I didn't get time to do a diagram that I wanted to. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to explain a lot of it today, and then I probably will create a diagram or point you to a good diagram of kind of how I use Git. These are the things that the Git lesson went over. They told you how to clone a repo, but you already know how to do that. We've been doing that for a while now. You have a couple assignments that you've been cloning. You've actually been forking. That wasn't even in here, but you've been forking repos and then cloning your remote repo to your local device. It did go over how to create a remote repo from a local one, and I will go over that as an example in the live coding. Push and pull changes, I'm going to go over that. Create and merge branches, I'm going to go over that. And then how to stash changes. To be honest, I will try to go over that. I'm going to be very honest. I use IntelliJ for my professional stuff, and IntelliJ has a thing called Shelf, where it does the stashing for me, but it also stores it long term. Where Stash is a little bit harder because you don't have that GUI, you don't have that visualization. Where my Shelf, that's the only thing I really use the GUI for Git. Most of the other things I do on the terminal. Right. Just a reminder, for assignment 4, we'll be making a web page. These are the main things and the main reasons why you use them. So I did carry this over from last time. HTML is the structure and content. That's what goes on the page. Your CSS, that's what we're mainly focusing on here, is the design. So what does it look like? What color is it? What font does it use? And then the JavaScript is whenever we start adding that in, will be the actions. So when you click a button, what actually happens after you click the button? We'll usually write that in JavaScript. More expectations. The next 2 weeks are going to be interesting because you're going to have 2 graded assignments kind of working at the same time. Again, I'm hoping that you do already have a good head start on assignment 3. That's my realistic goal, is you have at least a good head start. But me knowing how I work and how people usually work, you don't like having 2 assignments at the same time. But the good news is these 2 have nothing to do with one another. One is HTML and CSS, while the other one's JavaScript. One is logical thinking with tests. The other one is just, let's make something fun and pretty. So what I would suggest is still work on the Mars rover. But from previous people that I've heard, the Mars rover assignment's actually the hardest one in Unit 1. So just know that it might take a little longer. So it is due on Monday, and I'm hoping that you guys turn it in on Monday. But as you know, that's kind of like a soft deadline. So do not feel bad if on Monday you're like, I'm struggling. I need to wait a day for my IA to reach back out to me because I need to schedule office hours with them. So I'm waiting a day. But what I would suggest is while you're waiting, go ahead and go to assignment 4 and start it and work on it and have fun and do that more creative part while you're waiting to meet up with your IA. Again, if both of them were JavaScript and both of them were doing the same thing, I would not suggest that all the time. But because these are 2 totally different things, take a break from Mars rover every once in a while, but get something productive done, which is graded assignment 4. So the next hard deadline is everything is due at the end of Unit 1. So I don't know that exact date. I think it's at the end of March. But I can tell you, if you don't, assignment 3 is the only one that I'm like, if you're really struggling on that, just keep working on it, but don't worry about the due date as much. But assignment 4, you just need to turn it in because it really is just having fun and getting it done. So please turn assignment 4 in on the due date, which isn't until March 4th. And then assignment 5, turn that one in on the due date. But assignment 3 is the only one that, I would be fine with you just turn in when you need to, because there's a huge learning curve to that. So assignment 3 is the hardest one. All the other ones turn in on time. Just reading questions because I think I'm going to go to live coding after this. Yeah, somebody said that there's like a graded assignment due almost every week after this. And that's true. That's why I'm saying stay up with all the other graded assignments. But if you need to get behind on graded assignment 3, that's perfectly fine. Reach out to your IAs, reach out to me, and we'll be able to help with that. But do not get behind on assignment 4. And then also, like I'm saying, some of you get frustrated, which is 100% normal. When you get frustrated and you can't immediately get help, sometimes you're like, well, I'm just done for the rest of the day. And what I'm telling you is don't have that mentality. Say, I'm done with Mars rover for the rest of the day. Go do something else, whether that's reading more on the next lesson or doing assignment 4. So, think another question, what happens after unit 1? Then you get into Java and databases. So that's my playground. Like that's what I do on a daily basis. So I'm excited for unit 2. And then unit 3 is you guys creating your own projects in small groups. And I'm super excited about that. Like why even learn to code if you can't make a project? So we're going to be making projects. So 3 units. Unless LaunchCode tells me I'm not, I am planning on teaching all 3 units. So yeah, you're stuck with me. I think it's live coding now. To be 100% honest, I am not as prepared for this. Things came up. I think I alluded to it on Monday, and things are still happening. So I don't have my little cheat sheet. I usually have like a checklist of things that I want to cover, and I don't have that. So it's all like memorized in my head. So I might forget something, and I might be a little bit more scattered than normal. Please ask questions though. Those will keep me on track. So I'm going to go over the CSS stuff first, and then the Git stuff, and then the studio is over Git. So I will help preload the studio, and then as Jamarco told you, a couple of the groups are going to combine, and I'll take the lead on those groups. All right, so this is the example. I know you guys can't see this. I'll zoom in here in a second after I remember how. All right. So the first thing with the examples, somebody noticed. I'm going to tell you I'm slightly frustrated that nobody posted this earlier than today. I'm just be honest. Some of you noticed that there was a typo. When you guys see that there's a typo, even though that you guys saw it and you're like, oh, there's a typo there, and you just correct it, if you guys would post that in the homework help, it'll help so many other people so that they're not just spinning their wheels for a day. So when you see typos, please start posting them so that it'll help other people. So yeah, the styles, if you saw this is your reference. You're linking your style sheet right here. I'll zoom in just a little bit more. There we go. So your style sheet, what this does is it says go to the current directory, which my current directory is the CSS exercises directory, and it says go grab this folder. What's cool about VS Code is if you would start to type this, it should bring these up for you, and then you just click on them. So hopefully, if for future reference, especially for like assignment 4, you guys can just start typing and it should kind of link them together. The rest of this though is just copy and paste. It's a style sheet and it's a text CSS file. That's always the same. You never mess with those. Just to go over the head, this metadata is stuff that people use. I am not as knowledgeable as I should be on some of this. So just Google these. That's the cool thing about a lot of HTML and CSS. It's been around for so long that if you Google this stuff, you'll find it everywhere. The title, I don't know if anybody noticed, but this does not show up on your page at all. The title shows up in the tab. So I don't know if anybody has noticed that. So whenever I click on this in a little bit, I'll show you that that's where your tab is. I did a little bit of stuff here, but I didn't do much. I changed that this was the right thing. This brings in the JavaScript, but whenever I look at it, it's not there. It says later we will add JavaScript to websites, but it's not there. This is just getting you used to having an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript file all together. And then I added, these different things that it said in the example. So you guys can look through this, but I'm going to highlight a couple things here in a second. I don't know if it's, when you say necessary, I don't know, but this is what I copy and paste this exact thing every single time. And all I do is sometimes change where my CSS is. So I'm pretty sure it's necessary, but I'm not up to date on HTML5, whatever the things, the initials and versions are. So I would say yes, because I see this every time. Yeah. So the things I do want to highlight. Remember that inside your body, and body is a tag. So you can use, whenever I'm saying, what do I want to style? I can say body, I can say H1, I can say H2, I can state OL. Any of these tags, I can assign in my CSS and give it properties. Now, when we talk about order of properties, and I'll show this here in a second, that is the highest level. And because it's the highest level and the least specific, if you have conflicts, that is the one that gets overridden the fastest. That gets overridden. The next one is classes. Like I said, usually with classes, you're putting classes like center. This is just making sure that this gets centered. So it's still a higher structure, but it's not saying that everything in the body needs to get centered. I'm individually classifying that these need to be centered. And then the most specific is the ID. So we have this ID class. So for instance, I did body, background color of yellow. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can literally change the colors here. You can click on these and it'll change the colors. That's what VS Code will let you do. Get back to yellow. There we go. So I'm saying in the whole entire body, set the background color to be yellow. For the paragraph, set the color, not the background color, but the color. So that's like the text color to be green. In the H1, set the font size to be 36 pixels. When you use the dot, that's your class. So these, you just assign as selectors. These are your element selectors. This is your class selector. So then you have to do the class equals this thing to get it to show. And I said, and I think the book told me to do most of this. So there's not a reason why I did any of this. It's that the book told me. So don't read too much into much of the why. But text align. So I'm going to align the text to be center. The list color. This is an ID. This is the most specific. I said list color. The color needs to be blue-violet. And then I said with cool text, the color needs to be aqua. So again, I can match these to my HTML. So my ID of cool text is right here. So this should be aqua. This thing should be blue-violet, etc. So let's see what this looks like. So whenever I go over to index HTML, the fastest way or the best way that I would use is the open with live server. Yeah, that's the ugliest yellow I've ever seen. I'm even seeing some of you squint. Chris's face is like yellow. This is kind of So yes, again, I don't think that I would recommend any of the stuff that I put on here. So yes, change this, do it. This is what I was talking about, like assignment 4, I want you to have fun with. I don't care. Some of you are going to be very artistic and do amazing things. Some of you are going to try to push the bounds of your knowledge with assignment 4. I really do want you just to have fun. I'll go over what the test is looking for. So there are very specific things that you have to include, but I just want you to have fun. HTML is supposed to be fun. So, yeah, this is right. So there's my very cool website, web design. And I think I changed this because something wasn't working and I changed it. So, I'm losing real estate here. Let me get back to this. All right. So what I wanted to show you is, so I said in my styling that I wanted my paragraph to be green. And so down here, I have a paragraph. It's hard to see the color per se, but this is green. I'm going to change that. Let's change the, let's just do a lighter yellow. Let's do that. There we go. That's still ugly, but it's not as bad. Here, now you can see this is green. My paragraph, but let's look at some. I actually have 2 different paragraphs. I love making websites that's green, but I also have on my line 19, this web development is a very cool skill that I love learning, is also a paragraph, but it's not green. This is where CSS starts to get very confusing, especially if you come onto the job after a website's already built. You're like, well, I thought it should be green, but it's not. And then you're like, well, okay, so for this case, you understand, okay, so there is an ID. Let's look at this ID of list color and see what it says. And when I go down here to list color, it says, do blue violet. So list color is blue violet. And that's why this is blue violet, even though up here I said this is green. You know, I like breaking things. So let's figure out how I can break this. If I do this and I put it up here and I save it, it still does not override it. And that's because the type of selector, an element selector, one that does not have a period or a hashtag, this is most generic. If at any point you have a class or a selector that overrides something that your element selector says, it's going to override it. So the hierarchy is element, then class, then ID. So that is something that you need to know. Okay? On the other hand, there are some times where you have people that are like, hey, my paragraph is green. And then they'll just come down here and do this. And it overrides it to be red. So anytime there's an internal conflict, now, to be honest, somebody that does this in the same CSS, they should not, that'll be one of the few times that I would like actually get onto them, like say like, you need to do better type of thing. You never want to have a selector that's the same in the same CSS file. Okay? So I think most people would understand that part. But remember, I can have multiple styling sheets all across my project. So sometimes this paragraph is made for the whole entire site. Generically, the marketing team said, I need all paragraphs to be green. And then one of the business units that is dealing with one specific web page inside that site says, hey, I want my paragraphs to be red. So you're going to create a separate styling sheet just for their one page and put all of their business requirements in that sheet. And it might be like this. And so sometimes you're going to have red and sometimes you're going to have green. And sometimes, just depending on how it gets rendered, it doesn't know which one to use. So just know that those things, that's where people that do styling, there's two big problems that people have when styling. One is the order. They don't always see the order because they're spread all over the place. And then secondly is, and I'm not even going over this because if you want to see me frustrated, this will get me frustrated. I think it's called the display. It's like margin and padding and display. Those properties just get all over the place. Like I say center and it's like just slightly off centered. And I'm like, why is it slightly off centered? And it might be because I'm inside of a div that's inside of a something else that then it is centered based on some kind of property, but it's not what I want it to do. And then I don't know how to fix it. So when you're doing alignment like that, I always get some other team that knows what they're doing to just give me the code for CSS and have me plop it in. So questions. Why aren't these tags more descriptive? These tags are just the common built-in ones that's been forever. You can create any class or ID. It's kind of like a variable. You can create any class or ID, and I would make those as specific as possible. So oftentimes you'll see like container hyphen center. So this means that you're going to put it on all the containers that you want centered. So that you have like be very descriptive on your classes and IDs. That's why this one calls center, because you're centering it. List color, you could use list color if you're going to use it for every single list. That's fine because it's vague enough that you know you're just going to put on every single list. But cool text, I probably would not suggest that name because somebody's definition of cool text is going to be different. So going back, paragraph, if you have a paragraph and you have another paragraph, the bottom one, this reads it from top to bottom. So the bottom one always is the last one seen. So it's the one that's perceived. So if I just take this paragraph, you know how it's red right now, and I move it underneath here, now it's green. So the one at the bottom always wins out if they're the same, meaning both of these are the same exact thing. So the bottom one wins. I do not go over Flexbox and Grid. Of course, I have not finished Unit 1. I am reading along the same times you guys are. And so I think there are some IAs in this course that that know front end a lot better than I do, and I might have them talk about those things. So definitely bring those questions up in the lecture questions. So post those, and I might be able to find somebody that knows more, or I can Google it and eventually tell you. But I don't think that those specifically are in the course. Yeah. I don't know what you mean by single line threaded, but something I do want to show you for this. So debugging tools. If I go into inspect element, and remember how I said that web development is a very cool skill, is a paragraph and it has an ID. So if I go right here and I say inspect this element, it'll say that, you know, it's a paragraph and an ID. And if you look inside the debugger here in the styles, do you see how it identified that it has a possibility of blue violet, it has a possibility of green, and it has a possibility of red. So I do strongly suggest whenever you're doing CSS to click on the exact thing you want, see what it is over here, and then look through the CSS to see if there's something that is being overridden, such as right here, I know that it's supposed to be picking up green and red, but the blue violet's the one that's winning out. Then I can start saying, well, why is that? And then I can start identifying, oh, this has an ID, so that one's going to win out. If I go down to this one that's the green and red, I can see that both of them are there. And then I start looking over to the right, and it says, well, one's on line 24 and one's on line 27. And again, the highest line number, which is the lowest on the page, is going to win out every time. I'm glad some of you are helping each other out. This is what I'm saying. Trial and error and playing is the only way to learn, in my opinion, CSS. I can give you the high level tips of elemental selectors versus class versus ID. I can tell you that it reads top to bottom, so the bottom one always wins out. I can show you debugging tools, but I'm pretty much almost done with my knowledge of how to help besides just trial and error. The other thing that I would suggest is in your debugging here, if you are trying to do something, instead of doing it in your CSS and then seeing what happens here, you can actually change these right here. Meaning, let's say that I wanted this H2 to be a bigger font. I can go over here. I thought it usually allowed me to add. No. Oh, so it does here. Oh, this is user. So on my styling sheet right here, it allows me to add. And I'm clicking too many things. Hold on. Anyway, you guys get the idea. You guys will not do as many clicks as I'm trying to do. But then I could say, and do you see how when I start typing, it tells me every possible thing that your browser knows about here. And so instead of doing it in your CSS file, I would do it right here in your browser. That's what I would do, just so you're not switching back and forth. So then I can go to font size. And then you can just start typing like 70. Oh, hold on. No, I want this thing. 70 pixels. And then I can see what that looks like. So that's what I would do. You can still go to your CSS, but then if you do it here, then you just copy and paste these things. So then I would go like this, and then I'd go over here, and I'd just paste it in my CSS over here. That's just a suggestion for me. Another thing the book didn't talk about that you can see right here, you can do just the class by itself, or you can start doing, like, I'm calling these compound selectors. I don't know if that's the official name or not, but you can do an H2 that's also center. So if you do just center somewhere, it's going to do this one. But if you're an H2 and have a center class, it'll do these ones. So it's like a compound, like if it's both of them, but it doesn't work just for the center or just for the H2. It has to be both of those paired together before it works. So the question is a convention for the order. My thing is I put all element things first, then all classes, and then all IDs. But other than that, I mean, if it was me, if you're getting too long, I would do like alphabetical order, have some kind of structure to it and some kind of logic. But other than that, I've seen just people throw things in. I've seen a lot of craziness here. That's why a lot of people struggle with CSS, because a lot of it's just overlooking one little thing. Yeah. Well, and then whenever you do like universal styles versus main styles versus footer styles, in my realm, those are separate files. But I guess in something as small as this, they would be all in the same. Well, I want to try this out just because. So no. is the last thing I'm going to do, and then I'm going to switch over to what's that really bad one? I want to make sure that if this works, everybody knows it works. You can actually add multiple styles in here. And if you see here, it turned back yellow again. If I comment this thing out, it goes back yellow, not yellow again. The other thing I was going to try is seeing, you see that, I don't know if you saw that really well, but whenever I had the 2, which is the horrible yellow, like the bright yellow, if I had it underneath here, it stacks those up. And so I'll do that again since I have it in memory here. So my style 2 is on the bottom, which is the bright, bright yellow, and it's bright, bright yellow. If I reverse these two, so styles 2 is on the top, it's not bright yellow. So that's, again, you can stack CSS on top of each other. It always goes top to bottom. So yes, the bottom takes the priority every time. That's the last I'm going to do about CSS, unless you guys have something very specific, because it's all I know. So when you have multiple style sheets in the same file, which is common, not common for you guys, common in production, the bottom one always takes precedent if these conflict. And again, how do I tell that? I just go over here, I right click, and I hit inspect element. And then I go right here and I see that there are, in my styling, come back, styling. In my styling, there's actually 2 bodies, and I can see where they're from. One's in style, one in styles 2. And then I can see which one's being overridden. So just, I strongly recommend using this whenever you're creating and debugging CSS. All right, I'm done with that. All right. I don't have as much time for GitHub that I thought, but the studio also goes over this. So GitHub. Again, I wish I had a picture, and I really do want to make one just because I like doing this. So in GitHub, let's say that I wanted to start off having a local repo. So what I'm going to do is I'm not expecting you to be able to read this, so just trust me. I'm making a new folder called new project. I'm going to open up my terminal. And inside my terminal, I'm going to say, hey, I want this to be a project. So I'm going to do git init, initialized. So it initialized an empty one. I'm going to say git status. It says I'm on master branch. That's perfect. And so then I'm going to say open up this thing in VS Code. So now I'm opened up in VS Code. Did I open up at the right spot? Maybe. I'm going to create a new file called index.html. I'm going to say doc type something. I'm going to say, I'm just going to put in whatever. I'm not expecting this to be perfect. It's mainly for the Git. So do not read too much into what I'm doing HTML wise. I will make it bigger here in a second. But again, I'm wanting you to learn the Git stuff. So that's what I'm going to focus on here in a second. So let's say that I just made myself a basic document. And so what am I going to do? I need to commit that. So you guys already know these commands. So I'm going to do git status just to check it. It says no commits. I have untracked files, so I need to add those. So I'm going to do git add. Okay, so now whenever I do git status, Now they're added. These are things that need to be committed. So I need to commit them. So I'm going to do git commit message added index.html. So now I have it committed. And then many of you after this would do git push. So I'm going to do git push. Oh, git push. And it says no configured push destination, meaning I didn't pull this down from a repo that's up like a remote. That's what they call it, remote repo. I didn't do that. This is not connected. So I need to do the git remote add, and I need to have the name of it and the URL for this to work. Well, I don't have that. So what I can do is I can go to GitHub. And you guys will have to do this in pairs today. So just be forewarned already. You're going to be broken up into pairs for the studio. One of you is going to have to create a new repo. So you're just going to go to your thing and you're going to hit new. And I'm going to say test GitHub. It doesn't matter what it is. Test GitHub. I don't care. I would make it public. You can add a README if you want to. You can add a git ignore if you want to. For us right now, it really doesn't matter. I'm just going to create the repository. Before you move on, GitHub tells you exactly what you need to do. It says right here, it says create a new repository in the command line or push an existing repository from the command line. Do you remember over here? Let me get my terminal right here. It says I need to do a git remote add. Well, if you look right here, it says git remote add. So this is the command line. This is the line that you want to use when you are trying to use an existing repository that is on your local. So I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to push it right here. I'm going to remote add origin, or like that's the main file here. Now I can do a git push. And it says the current branch master has no upstream branch. To push the current branch, this is what I like about Git. I'm just going to copy and paste this. And it is pushed up. And so whenever I do this, now here's the only difference. Git by itself makes the default branch called master. GitHub makes its default branch main. Either of those work. I don't care which one you use. Just know that both of those exist. So now whenever I go to my code, I have my index HTML and I have my master branch. When you guys do this, and some of you will use main by default, and that is perfectly fine as long as everybody knows that's the default branch. Main or master does not matter. And you can change your default. I've done that before too. What I want to highlight now is, let's say that I am working on a team. My default branch should never be pushed to. Never. All of it should be done through pull requests. So let's say that I wanted to add a paragraph here, what I need to do is I need to do another branch. So I'm going to do git checkout -b. I forgot what that meant off the top of my head, but then I get to name it. And so I get to name my branch. This is checking out a brand new branch that in this -b, it makes that new branch for me. And I get to do it. So I'm going to say, add paragraph. Okay. So this says that it not only made it, but it switched it. In VS Code, I can tell what branch I'm on by this thing down here. So when you click on this thing down here, I am on add paragraph branch. It knows about two different branches, about my master and the add paragraph branch. So whenever I try to add a paragraph, what these are called in product, like in a real world, you have your master, nobody touches master. All of that has to be automated. You never touch it. What you do is you create what we call a feature branch. So I am creating a feature. I'm creating an addition to my project. This feature I am saying is, by my wording, I'm going to add a paragraph. So that's my feature that I'm doing. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to add a paragraph and say, isn't this fun? Okay. I'm going to test it. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say open with live server. It's going to open this up and it prints out, isn't this fun? It does what I want it to do. I'm happy with this. So then I'm going to go back and do our normal thing. And I'm going to say, I like it. So we're going to do the get add, the get commit, added paragraph. And then I'm going to do a get push. My problem here is when I created this branch, just like when I created the repo, my local knows about this branch, but my remote does not know about this branch. So if I go to GitHub right now, it still thinks I only have one branch. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste this same exact thing. GitHub does this. I use this all the time. I don't memorize this stuff. I literally just let it tell me what I need to type in. It's going to push, but it's going to set the upstream to origin add paragraph. So whenever I click this, it adds the paragraph. So now when I go here, refresh. Now when I go here, I actually have two branches. My master, which is my default, and my add paragraph, which is my feature branch. That's what I added to. So if I go to master and look at the index.html, my paragraph is not there. If I switch to my add paragraph branch, my paragraph is there. Now, in production, like if you're working on a team, the only way this paragraph actually gets to master is by this thing called a pull request. It says create a pull request. I don't think does the book go over this, pull requests? No, okay, I didn't think so. Whenever we get to unit 3 and we are working on projects, we are 100% doing this because this is industry standard. You don't have to worry about this for the studio that you guys are doing. So do not think that you have to memorize this part. I'm just showing you what this is. But what I would do is I would click on this and it would send me. Is it going to send me? Maybe it did and I don't know. Open a pull request. So then I would create a pull request saying I added this, and I would create the pull request. My team would be able to go in here and say, oh, you have some changes? Let me see what changed. And it shows you exactly what changed, and it only shows you exactly what changed. It doesn't show you every single file. It only shows you what changed. And then I can say, hey, I like this. Now, because I'm the person doing this, I can't approve my own pull request, but this is where if you guys were working on a team, you would hit approve, and then you would go back over here, and you would hit merge pull request. This is what I'm talking about automation. Like, I'm going to show you how to do this to the terminal, and that's what the book shows you, but this is how people merge their stuff into a default branch. So I'm going to confirm the merge, and it actually allows me, hey, if you're done with this feature branch, do you want to delete it? And I can just hit delete. And when I come back to the code, I know I'm going fast through this, but again, for today, you do not need to know this. My index now has the on master branch. It has this paragraph. Now let's see. It can't just magically add this. So let's go back here and let's look at the commit history. So if I go to commit history, it actually says that I added the index HTML. That was my initial commit. And then it actually added this commit for me. It merged in that commit for me. So then I got a question here. How do I know? It actually did not delete my local one. It does say blame. I love git blame. You can actually, in my other program, it's called git blame. Where did we see that at? Blame, yes. So what blame does, it'll tell you who. So when you guys are working on a project together, and you should look at this because you guys are going to be paired up and you guys will see who added what on this. And literally, I use this all the time. In my job, I use this all the time. Now, I don't care about the person as much as the time. This says 10 minutes ago. So whenever I'm editing code, I'm looking, was this code changed in the last 3 to 6 months, or has it not been touched for 5 years? And that's very important for me to know whenever I'm changing these things. So, but yes, it is called git blame. Yes, it's yeah. But that's showing your git history. Okay, so let's go back to what the textbook says. So I just showed you what production, like what I would expect if I was on a team. Let's do this again. Let's do git checkout -b. And now I'm going to add more, add header. I don't know, add header. It's going to switch this branch to add header. And again, this is what the studio is going to tell you to do. So just kind of, you guys are going to have to do this later, but I'm going to add a header. And then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the appropriate branch. That's the biggest key mistake that I see, is not being on the appropriate branch. And I'm going to add a header. And just like normal, I'm going to do the git add. I'm going to do the git commit. And now, if I do git status, it says that I'm on the branch git add header. There's nothing to commit. You should always do a git push if you can, but again, this is a clean branch, a new branch, so I got to just add this over here and say git push. And so whenever I come back here and refresh the page, my add header branch is there. And you can see that up above. This is how they say, instead of doing pull requests, this is how to get your stuff to pull into a different branch. You're going to git check out. Since it's not a new branch, I'm just going to call it, and it's a master. So I'm going to do git checkout master. If you do git stat, you can always do git status to see where you're at. So it says I'm on branch master, and this is up to date with the GitHub. And so then, because I want to pull in that stuff, I got to do one thing: git fetch pulls down everything, and it says, hey, there are some things that I want to do. So I'm going to do a git pull. Okay, so here's my so one red flag I had was it says that my master was all up to date, but my paragraph wasn't there. And I'm like, I know that my paragraph should be there. So that's why I did a git fetch. You don't have to do a git fetch if you know. You could just do a git pull. A git pull does a fetch and it pulls it at the same time. So you might not see the fetch all the time. The reason I am very, like, why I do the fetch is if I changed anything else, it would have told me about any other change, not just on my master branch, but on any branch. It would have said, hey, there's a change on these 3 different branches that your team is working on. So it would tell me about those changes so I know about them, but it doesn't actually pull them down. I still have to pull. So again, for this assignment, you probably don't need a git fetch, but it's just second nature to me from what I do. So I got to get pull, but do you see how the header is not in here, and I want the header in here? So, but I know it's in my other one. So this is where you do a git merge, and this was the add header branch. Get merge merges the two things together. That's kind of logical, but it merges it into whatever branch you are in right now. How do I tell what branch I'm in? I can do a get status and it'll tell me, or in VS Code in the bottom left, it'll tell you what branch you're in. So I'm in master. I'm going to try to add it and merge into master this get header. And if you see, it merged it in for me. So then I say get status. And it actually says that my branch is ahead of master. So I need to push. So I'm going to do a get log here and see what's going on. How did I get two things ahead of it? And this is where merging is a whole other conversation that we will have when we get into unit 3, I will go over merging. So you for today just need to know that merge exists. You're going to follow the commands. That's all you really need to learn. But there are actually different types of merges. There's like fast forward, squashing, and then this one, which does, it actually adds the header here, and then it actually creates a separate commit that adds the merge branch. So don't putter out on me. No, did I lose it? Well, that terminal's dead. All right, so I'm ahead by 2 commits. You guys are going to do the get push. Now that it's pushed up, my master, remember before, only had the paragraph. Now that I pushed it up, now it has the header in it. So it's hard to show merge conflicts with just me working on here. This is why you guys individually should never have merge conflicts whenever you guys are working with your own repo. But when you start getting teams, if somebody on my team created a header on line 6 that said one thing, and then somebody else on my team also created, it didn't even have to be a header, just anything on line 6 that conflicts with that, it'll say, hey, there's a merge conflict. I don't know which of these you want. And that's where you start like playing, well, and there's ways to do merge conflicts. I do not think, given the stuff that you guys have right now in your studio, there's a prime example for me to just sit down and work through merge conflicts with you right now. When we get to unit 3 and we have to deal with merge conflicts, because there's not just 1 or 2, there's like 4 people working on a project, we will do the same exact thing. But I'll have like volunteers, whether it be the IAs or some of you, and we will break and merge and do all this kind of stuff together so that you can see a better example of this. I just can't do it by myself because it's very hard to cause merge conflicts by myself. So I think that's all I absolutely had for you. I'm going to glance while I have you at the studio just to make sure that there's no other things. So again, you're not expected to be able to read what it's on my screen, but I'm going to look at the studio. Is there any other commands? Creating a local repository. We've talked about that. Push your repository to GitHub. I showed you how to do that. I'm not expecting you to know it right now. That's what the studio is an example. So don't think that you should know that. Get the teamwork started. So you're going to add a collaborator to your thing. So this will show you how to do that. If you, and I don't know if the IAs are on here, but if you have an odd number, it is perfectly fine to work in groups of 3. So just so you know that, but in a perfect world for this, they have it groups of 2 so that nobody's just sitting for too long. First message exchange. And then I think here, create a get, a branch and get, yeah, you're creating, okay. Yeah, I think I've went over everything. The main thing to look out for is this main versus master. I don't care which one, just make sure that you know what you're doing there. Because like you saw with me, when I pushed mine up, it said master. Most of these will say main on them. That's perfectly fine. Oh, this does do pull requests. Okay, so this is good. Perfect. This goes over pull requests. Right. Have fun with the studio tonight. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording.